Hello and welcome to Andertons TV. My name is Jack Duxbury. Your name is?
Elliot Thomas.
And you're from?
Stevenage.
Yeah.
Cranborne Audio.
Cranborne Audio. That's Tay.
Yo.
And another special guest in the back of the room.
Shawnee.
Now, all those introductions are because you've been kind enough to come along to show me Cranborne Audio's range of products. That's because I own one of these, and you may own an interface as well. If you do, have a look on the back of it and look for optical inputs or outputs. Tay, you might get in on that. Or it might say ADAT, I don't know, but we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to hopefully show you what you can do with that and how Cranborne Audio's products just seem like a dream in solving a lot of issues for people recording at home and professionally. Let's get into it.
Cool.
Right, Elliot, we are in. Little quick one. I was Googling ways to use my ADAT port.
Yep.
I wanted to expand this interface because it's got 4 preamps.
That's right, yeah.
I wanted more preamps for me. ADAT can do that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you'll probably find, though, it's got 4 preamps on there, but when you hook up to your computer, it says like 18 inputs, 20 outputs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But where are they? They're not on the back, but they are. They're in this ADAT port. So basically, you've got 8 channels of untapped inputs and outputs that are sitting there, not being used at the moment, that you could then use to expand with devices such as ours.
Now, I in full disclosure, I knew of products like there's a bunch of companies that do racks of preamps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always tend to be an 8. I can remember I only wanted a few more. I just wanted 4 more, really.
Absolutely.
And then when I was Googling it, this came up.
That's right.
Product came up. And then I found out we stocked it. And then I was like, can I invite them in? And Stuart's like, yes, you can invite them in.
Awesome.
And tell me what this product does in its entirety. And then can I ask you questions about it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
So it works in a basic way, very similar to those preamps that you were talking about. So if you wanted to record more stuff, like a drum kit, for example, you can connect this up to your interface and you get more inputs to record. The thing is with those kind of devices that once you've recorded stuff and it's in your computer, they're kind of useless at that point because preamps in the kind of the mixing stage, mastering stage, you don't really need them for anything. Whereas we kind of take this to the next level, whereas this is something that you can use when you're tracking and then something that you can use afterwards for mixing, mastering and processing. So basically, on the back of this guy, there's an ADAT input and an output. So you connect the output of this to the input of that, and then the output of this back to the input here. What that enables you to do is basically send tracks from your computer through your interface, through our device, and then back in. That kind of sounds a bit weird, like why would you want to do that? But with these kind of holes at the front, and with the 500 series format, which we'll get into, what this enables you to do is kind of insert analog processing across tracks in your DAW, like genuine analog processing rather than plugins, and use them in your mix section. There's a lot more to it than just that, but from a basic standpoint, you get 8 more inputs, 8 more outputs that you can use to integrate analog processing straight into your interface.
And we've got 2 cables here. This is the type of cable. Is it done digitally?
It is, yeah.
So that's one thing. I was trying to explain this to my dad recently, actually, because I was trying to explain ADAT to him. And one of the things that I think is that it's essentially lossless instead of like going out to the analog domain and back in through the converters.
Yeah.
'Cause that's one thing that I worry about is like adding more things to the chain. But it's
absolutely right.
You're kind of jumping this, right, and getting before the converters.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So like if you put it this way, if you wanted to hook a compressor or something and insert that in your session at the moment, you'd have this guy, you'd come out of the analog outputs, go into your compressor, and then you go back in.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got stages of conversion there, that's happening all the time. Whereas this guy, when the audio is traveling across this length of cable, it's all digital. So it's digital on your computer, it leaves this in digital, then it arrives at this, completely digital. And there's 8 channels passing through this. So that process there is completely lossless, as you say. But then when it reaches this guy, this has all your conversion built in. So this then converts this signal into analog, it then passes it through the processing in the front, and then it converts it back into digital to arrive back into your interface. But the difference with this guy is that the conversion in here is really, really high quality. So obviously, if you are hooking up analog gear and this kind of stuff, and you're passing through multiple conversion stages, if your conversion isn't quite up to it, then each time you do that pass, you're going to be adding more noise, more artifacts that you don't want. Whereas we understand that if you are integrating analog gear, you need that conversion to be top notch. So all the conversion here is obviously top notch, and it allows you to add your analog gear to apply that tone, rather than getting all the bad artifacts of bad conversion.
So let's talk about this box. If you don't understand, well, my take on it, I always thought this is the lunchbox format.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
500 series lunchbox, yep.
And one thing that I want to get straight to it because I'm really excited to ask. This is why we wait to this.
Sure.
You've got what looks like a mixer on the bottom.
That's right.
And that's the thing. I'm familiar with lunchboxes, but I've never seen that on the bottom. What does that do, and how can I use that?
Absolutely. Well, that's what we call a summing mixer. Now, summing mixers aren't new. I mean, obviously you have mixers back in the old days, and then more recently you get boxes where basically you send audio tracks into them, you mix all those separate tracks into a stereo file, and then you print that back into your DAW. So when you do that, you get all the benefits of the analog, kind of the analog hardware affecting the signal, you know, gluing it together, all these nice adjectives. And you get that in the analog domain before you whack it back into your computer. So that is what analog summing is all about. And I mean, if you look at some of the devices out there, the actual audible effects, the really obvious audible effects, can vary. Because you can get really tasty, juicy summing mixers that got transformers in there that make an effect, but they only do that effect, and you can't bypass them, you can't take them out. It's kind of one size fits all. That is what you've got. Whereas with this guy, and by using the 500 series format, as you mentioned, which are little modules like this, you can basically build your own summing mixer. So if you were to put EQs in there, you could put in nice preamps with transformers in there, put in compressors in there. You can then send your stem files from your computer through those processing modules, sum them together into a stereo file, and then send them back in. So basically, you can build it, buy your own modules, completely configure it the way you want. A bit like a guitar pedal board or modular synth kind of thing, where you decide what you want and you build it to match.
And I get you, because we've got a thing called a Sigma where I work.
That's right, yeah.
And but like you said, it's just 16 channels of the same flavour, whereas maybe on the drums I might want a bit more character.
Absolutely, yeah.
And on the vocals, yes. Anyway,
and it's kind of things with that as well. It's kind of like a black art, isn't it? You send things out there and then they come back, and then I think you get a little bit of control on the Sigma. But other devices, you just send audio to it and it comes back, and then you kind of hope for the best. Whereas with this, you can really get hands-on with it. If you put an EQ in there, for example, you could write EQs, you could change EQs, you could, during the pass of a track, for example, you can do whatever you like.
Elliot, I want to take a look at this bad boy.
Absolutely.
So what have we got? Because this is the bit that I can't get my head around here.
Absolutely.
So at the bottom, I can see that you've got cast, mix level. What are the applications, maybe say for someone recording first? So we were talking about summing. Summing may be a bit crazy for you and think like, why do I want to do that? But going back to that first reason, I just want more preamps.
Absolutely. Okay, well let's take that scenario for example. So say we've got the ADAT output of this connected to the ADAT input of that. So we're coming out of this into there.
Makes sense.
That's one process done. If you loaded this full of preamps, like we've got preamp here, preamp there, they obviously will take your mic signals that go into the back, amplify them to line level, then that's that process sorted out. And this rack, basically at all times, each of these modules sends out into the ADAT port at the back at all times. You can't turn that off, it's always sending out. What these switches do is they change what's being sent into the module. So they are input source selects for each of the modules that are inserted. So if you're recording, you've got your mics coming into the back, you just put this switch in the middle to analog, and now the module will be receiving whatever you're plugging into the back.
Love it.
So obviously you put your mics in there, put all the switches to analog, now your mics will go from your source, through your preamps, out of ADAT, straight into your Apollo. So that's your tracking end kind of sorted.
Now, if I go over to ADAT, what's that?
So that changes the input source of the module to ADAT. Now that means that when you send a source from your Apollo, it comes out through the module and then back in.
Okay.
So if you put these all to ADAT, for example, all like that, everything's set to ADAT. Now you can send 8 channels from your interface into this device. They'll then pass through the modules.
I'd use that for the summing bit, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
And now we've got this super special thing, and this is why you've driven all the way from Stevenage.
That's right.
Cast.
Yes.
What's cast? Because I haven't seen that, and is that your thing?
It is. It's kind of our own
Dig
thing.
it.
Yes. So it stands for Cat5 Analog Snake Transport, or Signal Transport. It's Signal Transport, isn't it?
It depends on the day.
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
The day is Signal
I love
Transport.
an acronym.
But basically what that means is we use Cat5, Cat6, Cat7 cable to transport analog audio. So I mean, you see this all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you hook your computer up to it, you've got routers hooked up to it. You see it in audio land as well. You see like Dante, ADP, this kind of stuff. That's all digital stuff. That's all transferring data. We're not interested in that. Cast basically uses this cable to transport analog audio. Exactly the same as a XLR cable. But the difference is where an XLR cable has 3 cores inside, you can transfer 1 channel of audio. This guy can transfer 4 channels of balanced analog audio. Through one cable. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I mean, you might be thinking, what's Cat5 cable? How's that any good? You know, you can buy XLR cables for 100 quid. You know, you can pick this up for peanuts. Yeah. So how's it going to be any good? But Cat cable actually is produced to a very high standard, and it has to be because it transfers data, which is actually quite a complex signal. It has very wide bandwidth, and the cross-talk rejection has to be made to a very, very specific standard. So what you'd find is that Cat7 cables, in particular, all perform at a very similar level. Price difference wise, you get a bit more signal integrity, you get a little bit more shielding, but in terms of their basic operation, they all perform at a very high level. But basically, that's a very complicated way of saying that Cat7 is actually really, really good at transporting analog audio. And it supports phantom power, supports everything like that. So, with this guy, with our cast system, you can connect things like this.
Taylor, you ready for this?
No. So this box is called an N22H. And what it means and what you can do with it basically is in fact, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's just do it. Cool.
We're freaking doing it!
So, we'll take one end, obviously, whack it into the rack.
Yeah.
Take the other end, put it into the cast output here.
Yarp.
And now you mentioned the source select switches. If we put those source select switches over to cast,
yeah.
Now you can plug your mics straight into the front here. They can be condenser mic, ribbon mic, dynamic mics, whatever you like. Go straight to the front. Those mic signals then pass through the cat cable, and then they arrive directly at the inputs of your modules. So basically, you can put this in the live room, vocal booth, the toilet, hallway, wherever you want to put it, and you've basically got an analog snake that you can then connect into the rack. But that's not all. There's even more. So on this guy, basically, if you have a vocal booth, for example, you want to connect your mics up into something.
Yeah.
But a vocalist needs to hear what they're doing. So this guy's got a headphone output on there. And through this same cable, you can also send a monitor mix that's generated from this rack back through the same cable directly out. So with one cable and one box, you have your headphone monitoring solution sorted and somewhere to plug your mics in. So it's a full vocal booth in one box.
It's so smart. And if you're thinking, why am I getting excited? Try find this, like anywhere else. It seems mad that this hasn't really existed.
Well, absolutely. Well, at the moment, you'd need like an analog multi-core.
Yeah.
You need to plug it into your interface one end, and then in the vocal booth, you need like a little mixer or obviously you can plug your mic straight into the multi-core. Then you need a headphone amp, you need all this kind of stuff, you need power. Whereas this is all sorted with one cable.
Because once you start doing multiple rooms, guys, it gets weird and it gets expensive. Cables, as we found with the studio that we had, Christ almighty, people always say with studio, it's the cabling that kills you.
Absolutely.
Like the cost of it.
For sure.
And what I love is that instead of like saying, oh, let's just do a really, because you can run these a long way as well. Can you do that?
You can run front of, quite a long way, yeah.
Yeah, instead of, normally you're trying to separate these two devices, but this little kind of satellite thing makes it all so elegant.
Absolutely. It's even great for like mobile recording. So say you want to go to a church, for example, and record vocals.
This could all be indoors. You could run a massive Cat 5,
100
right?
metres, easy.
100 metres.
Yeah. And the good thing about this guy, if you're in a church, the headphone amp on that can be battery powered. So you don't even need any power whatsoever near where that's connected.
So you just whack, what type of battery?
9 volt.
You just whack some 9 volts in. How many, and we can do all the channels, right?
Yeah, so you have 4 boxes in total and each box has 2 channels.
Do you know what I mean? Amazing. Right, I love it. Right, what's going on here with these aux things?
Sure. Well, that's kind of another element of the box. I mean, there's a lot going
sorry,
on here.
I'm getting well into it now.
It's all good stuff.
Go on.
So we talked about the 500 series rack in a little bit of detail, the Summon mixer. Another thing that this box has is a zero latency artist mixer. So what that essentially means is that when you are recording your drums or your vocals, whatever you're making on here or recording, you can create your mix using the Summon mixer and then send it directly to a pair of headphone outputs.
Right, okay.
So basically you can connect your headphones straight into that create your mix, and all that is generated in the analog domain, so it's all zero latency, and it enables drummers to hear what they're doing, vocalists to hear what they're doing, whatever you're doing, whack your headphones straight in there, and you can monitor it in analog. Because, you know, in a normal interface, you'd obviously have your inputs coming in, you have to open up the software mixer of your Apollo, whatever, work out how it works, they all work slightly differently, create your mix, and then plug your headphones into there. And this, as you said before, if this is one side of your desk and this is the other side, they're separated, it's a bit inconvenient. Whereas with this guy, headphones straight in, just turn the knobs up until it sounds good, and then you're ready to record. Yeah, there's another element to this as well. Obviously, we're talking about inputs that are coming in, so drums, for example. But if drummers are recording to a click or a backing track, you know, they need to hear that as well. So that's what these two controls are for. These are blend controls. So basically, they determine what the headphone amp is hearing. If you have them set to the mix position, you're just going to be hearing the analog mix that's created here. So that's, you're going to hear just your drums and nothing else. But then when you turn it over to the right, you start to hear another signal called the aux input. That's a pair of jacks on the back. So if you connect an analog source like from there into there, that includes your click track, your backing track, whatever you need to hear when you're tracking, whack that into the back of this box, and then you can blend between the two signals using this one control. So it's like an instant analog monitor mix.
I get it.
You just turn it until you hear enough click, or you can hear enough of your vocals, whatever you need.
I get it now. And do you have any other types of these boxes? You do?
We do.
So this one's got a headphone on.
Yeah. This guy's like N22, and this guy works in a very, very similar way. It hasn't got a headphone output, but it has two XLR outputs that you can use. But what's cool about this guy is it's completely passive. It doesn't need any power in order to operate.
Wow. So these outputs, if you didn't need if you didn't need the headphone amp, or say you already had a headphone monitoring system in a church,
or a pair of wedges or something
you could
like that,
save a bit of money and get this one, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Or just sending for like reamping.
Absolutely, yeah. For reamping, yeah. Or we want to send to a wedge or things like that.
That's a big problem for me is sorting out. I've got this Little Labs PCP that cost me the earth just to send long guitar lines. When I could probably use this and then just stick a lower cost reamping thing on the end.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh my God, so many possibilities. Right, as you'll hear, we're doing a whole kind of Cranborne intro. What's this?
So that's a very, very similar box to this, but that is a USB audio interface. So with this guy, you need an interface with ADAT in order to operate. So
I don't need this.
With that guy, you don't need an interface, that's right. All you need is your laptop, and you're ready to record.
Now, if I bought this, and you're thinking, hang on, what if I wouldn't be able to get anything into it without buying some of these modules, right?
Well, you can actually record without any modules. So you see here we've got two blank slots. Inside the slot, there's a little switch which bypasses the slot entirely. So even if you buy this rack and you don't have any modules to put in, you can bypass each of the slots and you can still record line level audio. So you can still plug your keyboards in or plug external preamps or whatever you need straight in.
What a cool thing.
Because we understand, like, you know, when you want to get into the 500 series market, you know, modules are expensive and you want to build your collection over time. So you could buy a rack, you could buy a couple of modules and that will keep you going for a while. But with our racks, you can still use each of the paths to record and then you can build your collection slowly over time.
Right. Should we do a little flipperoonie, Tay, and we talk about the back? I'm just going to flip, and we'll stick on this one. Right, it gets even deeper on the back for me.
Yes, absolutely.
But you can also insert things.
That's right, yeah. So that insert point comes after the module, but before the converter. So now when you're tracking, for example, you can put your mic straight into the XLR.
Right.
That can then go through your mic preamp.
Yeah.
That's right. Then after the mic preamp, it goes to the insert point. So you can connect like a compressor or an external EQ, whatever you need, like a rack mount piece of gear, into the insert point. Then you're basically creating a channel strip.
And then I know they're labeled, but it's still, if I'm seeming oddly excited, it's because exciting to me. I can remember trying to record my band once and we wanted to use two different recorders for some reason.
Yep.
We wanted like a laptop setup, and then there was a video guy. That was it. He had his own rig. And to tap all of the individual, we had to buy mic splitters and things like that. These are direct analog
Absolutely.
audio outputs.
In fact, if you were to just ignore, if you just look at this section here and ignore everything else, it's exactly the same as a standard 500 series rack. So those outputs are analog outputs of the modules.
And they work at the same time as sending it digitally?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's so cool, man.
So it's really useful for things like
I
that.
use cassette machines a lot. So I love the idea that I could have this and then have a cassette player and tap those off
Absolutely. Really
into my
useful for things
cassette
like that.
machine.
Yeah.
I dig it, I dig it, I dig it. What else have we got? Well, hey, you do the stuff, not only do you build the boxes, but you build the stuff to put it in. Here's probably a clip. Tay hates it when I go rogue on this, but check out this clip of us using it for a recent mic demo.
Gravity is working against me, and gravity wants to bring me down.
Back in the room. Those mics you heard were being recorded through one of these. And what is this, Elliot?
Sure, well this is our Camden 500 mic preamp.
Yeah.
But this is the 500 series version, but what you were using was the rack mount version.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is our award-winning, critically acclaimed mic preamp.
This is where I first saw you guys.
Yeah, sure.
I saw like a voiceover dude
Oh yeah.
talking about it. I think an American voiceover
That's right,
dude.
yeah, Mark, yeah. He's
Yeah.
kind of cartoon artist, does a lot of voiceover cartoons, things like that.
And he was demonstrating what I thought was really unique. You've got a bit of a super secret special
This
sauce
is it.
thing.
Well, this is a kind of a Jekyll and Hyde preamp. So you're kind of talking about the Mojo circuit here. I mean, Mojo is a word that's used a lot, but with this we actually mean it. So everyone says that as well.
Actually sticking it on the product, I think, is a really brave thing to do, yeah.
But if you just ignore that for a second, the Camden preamp is basically designed to be a super clean, super transparent, kind of modern preamp. So if you turn the Mojo off, basically whatever you put into this is what you're going to get out. We wanted to design a preamp that didn't add any coloration, didn't add any negative artifacts to your recordings. You basically put a mic in, you amplify it with a nice pure gain.
We felt that. That's what those demos are. There's no compression or EQ.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
And a lot of times, just a nice, clean preamp gets you most of the way. I mean, there's loads of numbers that we can get into. I mean, just a quick one. In terms of frequency response, you know, we're used to measuring things from 20 hertz to 20k because that's what we can hear.
Yeah.
But for a mic preamp to kind of perform at its best, we need to extend that frequency response much wider. This has a flat frequency response from below 1 hertz up to above 1000 kilohertz.
Whoa.
So that's a really wide bandwidth. And there's loads of reasons why we want to achieve that and why that's good. But basically what that means is that what this does is it amplifies the signal, but it doesn't add any distortion, doesn't add any phase shift, doesn't add any negative artifacts at all.
Until you want it.
Until you want it, exactly.
And that's what I love, because this is why my dad was looking at a preamp, because he was like, oh, I've heard this thing like coloration, or I just want a bit more, he didn't use the word sauce. I mean, imagine that down in Dorset. Need some garlic sauce on it. But this is the thing and that you were talking about with the summing as well, like adding some kind of flavour.
Absolutely.
And so you have two different types, right?
That's right at the top, yeah.
Thump and cream.
That's it.
Elliot, what's your take on thump and cream?
Well, you can kind of perceive it in whatever way you like, but thump, they are quite descriptive. Thump gives you that kind of real low end saturation kind of thing.
Voiceover guy really came across. Go check his video out.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's very kind of low end specific, but does some high end stuff as well. But it's not EQ, this is all saturation. This is all like overdriving and saturating and kind of driving the circuit, like you'd get in an analog piece of gear.
Yeah.
And then cream is a little bit, it's more mid-range focused. You get a lot more overdrive and a lot more sources. But
am I blending this in when I use this
that's
control?
right, that's like a
in
mix
parallel?
control. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
I mean, that's kind of one way you look at it, but another way you can look at it is that thump is kind of more your transformer style saturation. You know, because when we did Mojo, we didn't just do it all by ear. We measured loads and loads of famous preamps, loads of transformers, things like that. Things that people revere as getting that kind of vintage, nice, warm sound. We measured those, worked out what they were doing, and then we've recreated those effects, but using discrete components rather than a big fat transformer.
And on I didn't get a chance to use the DI. Have you got a crazy spec on the DI as well?
Yes, of course. It's nothing we do is normal. It's a BJT input, so rather than a FET input, it's a BJT, which is bipolar junction transistor. Someone far cleverer than me come up with that. and Ed, our engineer, made it all work. But for me, it sounds really unique as a DI. It sounds almost amp-like. It's kind of forgiving sounding. These DIs sometimes sound real kind of flat and nasty sounding, whereas this is actually quite enjoyable to use. It feels kind of amp-like's a phrase that everyone uses, but for me, it kind of gives you that vibe.
I've had the DI revelation. You know, when you plug into one that's really good. Oh, crikey, it changes everything.
Yeah, well, you'll definitely like this.
I just used the word crikey, I was that excited. Elliot, that was awesome. I feel like we covered the whole thing. Have we covered everything?
There's a few extra tricks I can talk you through, actually. There's actually one really, really cool
Let's
one.
do it, let's do it. Yeah, come on.
Okay, so we were talking about the front panel. Let's put this around again. Because like one thing that people like to do, especially in digital world as well, is they create chains of processing. You know, when you don't just add one plug-in per track, do you?
No.
You add an EQ, you add a compressor, limiter, whatever you like, and that builds up your sound. You can do the same on this as well.
Right.
So you were recording vocals the other day, for example. So let's pretend we were back there. So you can connect your mic into the preamp in the first slot.
Yeah.
Self-explanatory. But then in this rack, we have a compressor here, a compressor there, and then some EQs. So what you can do with this little switch down here, this little chain switch.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, so the chain switch basically enables you to create channel strips. It sends the output of this module into the input of the next, output of that module into the input of the next, and then so on and so forth. So with just a few switch presses, you could then send your mic signal from here, through your compressor, through your EQs, and then straight back into your interface for recording.
With no repatching.
That's right.
But the best bit is...
Yes. But what's really cool about that is obviously you kind of get overexcited sometimes when you're tracking. You kind of might apply a bit too much compression, you might change the EQ a little bit, you might be doing some radical stuff on here.
Oh, definitely.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could like undo that processing?
Yes.
Say you've gone a bit too mad. But with this you can, because at all times, remember I said to you before, all the ADAT outputs work all the time. Remember that?
Yeah.
Long time ago now. Basically, all the ADAT outputs are always sending out. So if you were to record the output of ADAT 1...
it's like a dry...
Yeah, basically you can record at every single stage of the chain. So if you were to record ADAT output 1, you'd get just the pure preamp. If you record ADAT output 2, you just get the output of this, and then so on. So if you were to record 6 channels at once, for example, you could record every stage of the process.
Taylor's getting it. I can see the drool. He was like, why are we getting these guys? And I'm like, trust me, Matt. No.
Oh, really? Was he now?
No, because he just loves my keyboard playing, don't you, Taylor?
Oh, I see.
He's just an addict.
Well, so do we, of course.
Oh, no. Oh, wow.
That's kind of a unique
so
feature.
Cool. And for demo, like, hey, YouTube demo guys, you know, that idea of like showing what the different things are doing,
Absolutely.
or even to clients.
But even like the voiceover guys, I mean, they really just plug a mic in, record that. You know, they work really quickly.
And you can be brave. That's what you can be more brave in the tracking process, and that whole thing of commitment that everyone talks about. It's hard. And just some sterling choices on these. As a guy looking to get into the 500 series things, this is a dream.
Awesome.
Elliot, my man, thank you so much.
No worries, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for watching. If you stayed around this long, I hope you bloody well did. If you did and you liked it, please click the like and subscribe. If you don't, we can learn from it. We're grown-ups. We can take the hate. Thanks, Tay-Tay, as ever. And check out our other videos. We've got a lot of mic demos and shootouts where we're using your preamps, and hopefully that gives you an idea. And just Google it, and you can buy all this stuff from Andertons.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. See ya.